What's up, guys? Welcome back to Streetcar Shenanigans YouTube channel, and I just want to apologize that I promised to bring a video a week, and I've received multiple messages in which I have broken that promise, so I want to start by saying I'm sorry. It has been absolutely crazy, and I don't even know where to pick up on the content to get you guys up to speed. So I'm going to warn you in advance that this video is going to be a little bit longer than the usual video. I'm actually at my home garage, so you can see I don't spend a lot of time here. There's not really a whole lot of lighting, although the Tramp is all good, and she's been getting a lot of miles on it. It's sitting behind me. My notch is in the other corner behind me here, and it's been sitting ever since it left the shop a couple years ago. But in today's video, I wanted to catch you guys up to speed on what's going on at the shop, what happened since the last video you guys saw was Bob Gruber's sick week car being finished, and kind of get you up to speed. In fact, I even got a notebook to do so. I think I really want to start with where we left off, which was with Bob Gruber's sick week car. It is that F1x ProCharge 363 small block. If you have not seen that video and you want to watch it after this or come back here afterwards, I'll put the link above and in the description down below so you guys can check it out. It's actually like, we call it like the Tramp killer, because it is like a little bit more of an extreme version of what the Tramp is. Really cool car. You can check out all the details there. You'll see real quickly why it's so similar. But the ultimate update on that is that it did not make it through sick week. So we thrashed really hard to get it through sick week, and it was kind of a morale killer when it did not make it. It was nothing that we did. Basically what happened is that the car had to be street driven, right? It's a race engine, it's kind of a race motor, but it needs to be street driven. So the reliability and durability of all the components used need to be taken into consideration for their use. It doesn't matter if it's a sick week car or if it's something you're just going to go beat around the block once in a while like this, but that is one of the primary things that we try to focus on when we put cars together. Now, the engine was already installed in the car. We didn't have much to do with it, but later to find out about 1 hour of street driving is all the Harlan Sharp rocker arms could keep up with when it has the spring rates and that was installed on the motor for this year. So it revved really high, made a lot of horsepower, but did not live longer than 1 hour on the street, and it fatigued all the rocker arms and it started breaking them like every 5 miles. So the Bob's car is currently at the shop getting redone, and we are doing our own valve train magic on it. We are respecking everything. We're keeping the Harlan Sharp aluminums on it, and we're going to see if what we kind of thought up in our mind is going to work on the process. Now, Bob did buy Jessel's steel rocker arms, but the amount of machine work required to get those to fit the heads is not going to work for us. So we kind of took a lot of what we learned on the twisted wedge R heads on the Tramp here, even though this is a hydraulic roller, and I could not convince Bob that a hydraulic roller would be just fine for his application, if not preferred. So we are doing the route that we are right now. We'll do a video on that once his car is running later this week. So that's what happened with the sick week car. That was the last video on the channel. That's why I wanted to address it with you guys. But the big portion of this video is going to be what is happening with the Tramp, the 3-valve, how did Florida go? A lot of those questions have been coming up in our messages. So let's start with the Tramp, because I've been driving it a lot lately, and I've kind of re-fallen in love with the car. Obviously, I did not have it much last year, so having it out this year early, we have had some really good weather, has really spoiled me. I have almost 400 miles on her already. It made some killer power. So let's go down the list with the Tramp. Number one is, if you didn't see the video about the supercharger upgrade, we did switch it to an F1a94. As of right now, the F1a94 is leaking on the case, so I'm a little disappointed by that, but I've already been in contact with ProCharger. They're sending me an O-ring and oil, so it's all good. You know, things happen in assembly, but that's the only issue I've had with it so far. On the dyno, let's just hop right into the dyno information. So we were going to Florida. I don't remember how long ago this is, but we were supposed to go to Florida in March, and we just finished putting the Holly Dominator on the Tramp. the F1a94, putting the new combo together with the new valve train components, and we really needed to dyno it and get it ready to go to Florida like 3 days before we planned on leaving to go to Streetcar Takeover down in Bradenton. So we got the Tramp finished up, and we got the 3-valve finished up kind of simultaneously. It was a lot of work from Dan, Steve, and I to get the stars to really align. And if you were involved in that process, thank you so much as well, because it takes a lot of people to get 2 cars kind of this caliper ready to go, travel 1,400 miles to go make test hits. So Tramp was kind of main priority. We did like basically a race spec wiring harness for it. Dan did a killer job doing, using all Raychem, heat shrink boots, epoxy, everything sealed really nice. All the lengths of everything was perfect. We used the output shaft speed sensor of the transmission for drive shaft speed. We put a front wheel speed sensor on it. Coolant pressure, oil temperature, coolant temperature obviously, and a host of other goodies that will make this thing do a bunch of cool shit that it didn't do in the past. So I'm really happy to have a Holley Dominator in this now. It's been really a lot easier to tune and do some kind of trick fancy shit I'll be doing this year, which allowed it to go onto the dyno. Now, on the dyno, it made some pretty good power, but initially I was going into the dyno session thinking I don't really care what it makes. I just want it to rev really high. The power, the weight, the RPM that it was operating at before I even changed any of the combination 2 years ago when I dropped a valve, that setup worked really well. And that was all off-the-box junk. Now, if you come around the shop, you've heard the story a million times, but when I say off-the-shelf junk, I don't mean it's bad, but the stuff that's on here now is really what you would consider trick. It's like race stuff. Where before it was like AFR 205 Renegades out of the box, Scorpion rocker arms out of the box, no stud girdles, Morel lifters, which they screwed us in the past on other builds, but that's what was in this. 5/16 080 push rods. I mean, real entry, bolted together, and it works type stuff. And Victor EFI manifold. I revved that thing with the D1x to 7,600, 7,700 a few times in data logs. Fast forward a little bit, the end of that season, it ended up dropping a valve. We had this set up. There's a video on this whole motor already. I get a lot of questions on what motor's in the Tramp, especially now that it's getting some exposure out this year already. There's a whole video on it on the channel. You can see the basics of what's going on now. Twisted wedge R heads, box R intake manifold, same camshafts it's had for years, 3/8 push rods, T&D shaft mount rockers, and I wanted it to rev. So when we originally put this on, it didn't rev. It went 6,400. It would misfire, backfire. It was doing all sorts of things that pointed to valve train control issues. So we ended up taking the whole top end off. I think the misfires knocked the head gaskets out of it because we didn't really have a lot of timing in it. This is, last year. And then upon checking the crankshaft, we found the crank was bent, and that is why the car was down last year. So now this year, it has a Cali's center counterweight crankshaft. It has the same top end. It has our spec on the valve train as far as, valve spring and, well, all the magic components that people pay us to make sure that their car has. And now it rips. So when we went to the dyno before Florida, the main goal was I want it to rev. I don't care what kind of power it makes. Even though it's got a bigger blower, I dropped the compression down a little bit with head gasket thickness. So I just wanted it to rev. Well, first dyno pull, it made like 21 pounds of boost, which is considerably light compared to what it made with the D1x. And it made like 930 horsepower, which the D1x ultimately ended up making 940 horsepower on like 26 pounds. And that was way over spinning the D1x. So spinning the F1a94 less than its max, it made similar power, a little bit less. I think it made like 900 actually, not 930. I don't remember the exact numbers, but and I was like, "Ooh, all right." But most importantly, it revved to 78, and a little bit over 78, and then it just flat all the way to 8,000. So it did not really lose valve control. It maintained way more RPM than I've ever had it on the dyno with, and I was extremely happy about that. But being that racing is kind of a short game, you just kind of keep hitting milestones. As soon as it did the RPM that I wanted, my attitude of not wanting whatever max power it can make quickly went away. I was just like, all right, what's the next pulley we have? So we pulleyed it right away. Next pull, we didn't even do, I think we did like 2 pulls just to make sure that the fuel curve was looking good and the plug looked all right, and then we pulleyed it right away. And we went from 21 pounds to 24 pounds. And on 24 pounds, it started to make about what the D1X made, was like the 940, 950 range. It actually lost a substantial amount of torque in the mid-range, which that could be chalked up to a couple different things. I moved the intake center line of the camshaft a bunch to try to get it to RPM more, and that will move the peak torque curve up, which it did. So that could be part of it. I dropped about 0.3 of a point of compression with the head gasket thickness change. That would also change mid-range power. And then overall, the D1X just kind of makes more mid-range power. It's kind of a little bit more geared that way with how that blower is designed. It's supposed to have a little bit more mid-range punch than the top end like the F series blowers do. So I was a little disappointed because at the recommended blower speed, it actually made like equal to what the D1X made. Now the D1X, we were spinning about 10,000 RPM over what ProCharger recommended, and that probably ultimately led to us having to rebuild it once. And the F series, I'm hoping I don't have to rebuild it, but I did expect a little bit more results out of it, so we, of course, pulleyed it again. And once we pulleyed it again, it started to make about 27 pounds of boost. I think it made like 27 and a half at about 7,900 RPM. And at 7,900 RPM with that boost level, it made like 1035 on its first hit with that pulley. Now we're officially in the 4-digit club with the Tramp. I was extremely pumped about that. And looking at the spark plugs, it said it was like really short on timing, and we were just, some of the math didn't quite make sense. Obviously, we were a little bit rushed, but one thing that we noticed is that I did put 7 heat range spark plugs in it, and but the timing number said that maybe we should just try a hotter heat range plug rather than putting more timing in it. So that's what we did. Put a set of 6s in it, and it picked up like 38 horsepower to the tire. The heat mark on the plug started to look like in line with the timing that we had in it and what we expected to see, and it made like 1070 or 1075 to the tire. And then I was like really jacked up, and unfortunately we're hooked on, we don't really like dyno numbers, we trace trap speed, but when it is on the dyno, you're like, well, fuck it, we might as well try to make 1100. So with only 30 more to go, we started to lean on it, rev it a little bit higher. That's when we started to kind of figure out that it could go to 8,000 pretty clean, or very clean, I should say, for a hydraulic roller camshaft. It went to 8,000, no problem, and sprinkled a little bit of timing in it, put a little bit of fuel in and out of it to kind of see what it liked, and it ultimately made like 1100 flat.
Hell yeah! 1,100 horsepower. 1,100 point. Remember I said it was going to say 1099.7? You better take a picture of that fucker before
we got it all.
Don't be pointing that shit at me, Steve.
We were pumped on that. I was really happy to make 1,100. I mean, that's a substantial gain over in the past. That is with the F1a94 and a bell mouth. Now, I did spin it like 3,000 over max impeller speed. You know, will I eventually maybe spin it even higher? Who knows? As of right now, I have an air. I'll show you guys the street setup. I have some timing taken out of it. I have an air filter on it. It probably makes, you know, 950 like this. You know, maybe a little bit more at the tire. But it definitely feels a lot faster than the D1X when you start to rev it. But the mid-range, like the 3,500 to like even like 2,700, like 2,700 up to 4,000, feels like there's some missing there. And I've already kind of messed with the tune-up in that area to see if we could spice it up. But being like almost 12-to-1 compression, I don't want to cram a bunch of timing in a high load area to try to basically fake torque. And then if you go out there and you know stick shifts are abrupt on the gear change, I don't want it to fall back into that area, detonate, and then hurt something. So that was a couple days before Florida. As I was on the dyno with the red car, Dan and Steve and Zach were finishing the 3-valve to get it on the dyno. So we literally unstrapped the Tramp and strapped the 3-valve on back to back, and then we were there till 4:30 in the morning with the 3-valve dynoing. So shout out to ASSC Racing as always for putting up with our antics and allowing us to keep them there wee hours of the night to get our shit dynoed. But the 3-valve is fucking. We thought last year that it had some good mile an hour. It was making some good power on track. But every time we put it on the dyno, we had some kind of stupid issue, or it didn't rev, or wouldn't. You know, we ran into some things that we didn't expect. But we are also like digging really deep into a platform that's kind of fallen to the past. I mean, there's a very small amount of 3-valve guys, and I'm sure if you're watching this right now, no offense, but there's just not a whole lot of R&D going on with the 3-valve platform. And I would say as of right now, we probably have the fastest running 3-valve car that's getting shit done, you know. So it made good power. We made some changes to it. We changed the exhaust housing size. We moved the camshafts around on that platform. I had Rich go through the heads and change some things in there. And when we brought it to the dyno before Florida, all those changes added up to unlocking some of the power that we were expecting it to make. And it made some really, really stout numbers on the dyno. So we were really happy to get that thing off the dyno and ready to go to Florida. The next morning, you know, so we were on the dyno till 4:30, went home, napped, got back to the shop at like 1, started packing everything up, and then we left to go down to Florida. So worked out well. We did both the car's first oil changes down in Bradenton, and we decided to make a long story short, we decided to race in Streetcar Takeover in Bradenton. I was only going to test and tune on a couple days before Streetcar Takeover with the Tramp just to kind of get reacquainted with the car. I wanted to cruise it around. And when I was driving it the first night we were there, or the second night we were there, I didn't drive it the first night, but the second night that we were there, I heard what sounded like an exhaust leak. So we got into the track rental with Your View Racing and Second Shift. The Second Shift guys, they kind of invited us to go. They were looking for people to fill the spot, so we brought all of our cars there. And we brought the Tramp, the 3-valve, Michael Zani's GT500. He brought that down. And then now we have 2 good customers that are living in Bradenton. So Lou brought his Grand National out that has blacklist work done to it. And Mike Wilson brought his twin turbo Camaro out. So we had like 5 cars to work with there. And all of them were getting ready for the season. We were all on radial, ultimate prep, except for the Tramp would have been on slicks. So anyway, I helped get all those cars sorted out. Dan, Steve, and I kind of had a field day working with everybody else's and playing with laptops and suspension and getting them to work that we really didn't mess with the Tramp much. So it came time, I was like, hey, the rental's over. It's regular test and tune. I'm going to try to make some passes with the Tramp, see how she shakes down. And we started changing the wheels, and I'm like, oh, I wanted to look for an exhaust leak. Started looking for an exhaust leak, didn't see anything obvious. Tightened all the bolt, hit all the bolts, everything felt tight, nothing was moving. I was like, that's not good. So I was like, well, maybe I left number 8 spark plug loose. So I'll go to check all the plugs, make sure that none of those were leaking, and all the plugs were tight. I was like, shit. So then the 3 of us started to, basically crank the motor over because you could hear it while cranking, like, shh, 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 shh. It was leaking compression out somewhere, and aside from those 2 places, yeah, head gaskets were the next one, and sure enough, it hurt the head gaskets on the passenger side bank is what we could see. So we saw a little bit of water trail, like a little rush trail coming down the side of the block where the water was coming out. It still ran and drove okay, but obviously I wasn't going to continue to drive it. I definitely didn't want to hurt the head deck surface that I just had done to put the motor together. So ultimately, at some point on the dyno, it knocked the head gaskets out of it because we didn't drive it. We didn't really drive it or beat on it up until that point, and we didn't notice it on the dyno. So maybe it just started to, and then it got worse when I went out and drove it around the block when I got there. But None of the spark plugs ever said that it should have done that. I looked at all the spark plugs even after I found that it was the head gasket. That while we were down in Florida, I pulled all the plugs out of it. None of those looked like they were aggressive. So it was kind of a bummer. Obviously, we ended up just putting that into Lou's garage, and the Tramp just sat the whole Florida trip. The positive side to that was I really got to focus on everybody else's car, and I have just as much enjoyment watching other people enjoy and succeed with their vehicles as I do with my own. So, it was still a fulfilling trip for us. Dan brought his Cobra. That went great. So I'll throw some video clips in here as we go on stuff I have off my phone. I didn't do a whole lot of video recording while we were down there because it's just crazy chaos the whole entire time. But you guys will see kind of the 3-valve make some hits. We went personal best to the 60, personal best to the 8th, personal best to the quarter with the 3-valve with room to grow. So we were really happy with how that car went. Lou's car went his personal best every time we changed something on it. Wilson's car was running about the same as it always does. I don't think he did any personal best, but he did go to the finals in Streetcar Takeover in the class that he raced. So that was really good. We didn't do so hot in Streetcar Takeover. Some of the data that we were getting off the 3-valve was causing me to chase my tail, and the car just ultimately was slowing down every time I would change something. So that was a learning experience. That kind of sucked, but it's behind us now. We have to learn. We have to learn in order to grow, and we do a lot of that. So we're not scared to try something new or try something different to potentially yield better results, and sometimes it doesn't. So unfortunately, that was one of those times it didn't. But special shout out to Zach for always allowing us to poke around and change stuff and really get his car to work to the best of its abilities. And unfortunately, sometimes rolling the dice leads to not working to the best of its abilities. So thank you, Zach, for always being a great customer for that, because it really does make a difference.
Brakes. Damn.
So 3-valve, I'm not really going to discuss the dyno numbers on the 3-valve. Currently, fast forward now 2 months into present time, we have a problem with the 3-valve. We'll do a whole separate video on that. I'm not going to dwell into it. But as of right now, the engine is back out of it. We went to a 1320 race last weekend, lost oil pressure. We definitely should have taken down that Midwest Cash Days. The car had every bit of capability to win. But a loss of oil pressure caused us to bow out early while all the parts were still inside the engine. So that was a huge bummer, but I do have a couple clips of that thing making a sweet hit there. So I'll obviously post them here. Also really cool if you're watching this video and you were at the Midwest Cash Days. If you guys came up and said hi and how's it going, I watch your channel, that was like literally the biggest fuel to the fire of making this video. So I'm sorry it's really long, but I want to kind of catch you guys up on everything that's going on, and I'm excited to share it with you. My brain can't really process how to bring you guys as much content and what we're doing every day. And my time it just doesn't allow for it. It's really difficult. I don't know what the solution is, but I really appreciate you guys coming over and saying hi. And if you said, hey, I watched the channel, I've been watching this car come together, it was a huge motivator to get back on the camera and bring you guys this shop update that I am right now. All right, so we got the 3-valve, we got the Tramp, we talked about all that stuff. I showed you guys some videos. We talked about Bob's. And we really did kind of most of the Florida recap. You know, we went down to Florida with all those cars. All of them did really well. Lou's drove to the track and back. Mike's drove to the track and back. The Tramp, we drove it to the track and drove it back, but that was the last time for the time. So ultimately, Florida was good. The Ruckus had a problem. It blew a gasket on the crank on the gear case, so it leaked oil all over the place, and we couldn't ride the Ruckus anymore. Dan had an idler pulley, a stock Terminator idler pulley was broken. So everybody talks about them exploding. We got lucky that didn't happen. It just cracked, and it was causing some pretty bad noises. We were like, well, what the heck is that noise? So the last day he kind of parked his for the majority of that. You know, the last day he didn't drive it at all before we left. But it was definitely a grind and a hustle to get down to Florida, and it's been a grind and a hustle ever since we got back. Couple streetcars trying to get to Florida. Kentucky shut us down. Woo! Not a bad thing to see going down the highway though, eh? Well, unfortunately we're duped right now. We're on the side of the road in Kentucky. We got the rigs out. Everybody around us has to think we're complete idiots because we got the Ruckus out of Zach's trailer and investigating what potential accident is going to have us shut down for several hours. And then we're going to try to find an exit to maybe get out of here, because we literally missed the exit to get out of here by like three-quarters of a mile. But we got the rig in tow. Everything's doing good. I think the 6-liter is getting better fuel economy than the Denali. Steve's waking up.
And we're going right off the trailer, right into
Yeah, buddy. Oh, we're stuck in traffic. It's 4:45 in the morning. Somewhere in, are we in Kentucky or Tennessee? No, Kentucky, right?
Just past Tennessee. Nashville sign is right there.
And the radiator's leaking on the Tramp. So we're going to change the radiator because we're wired on caffeine and expecting to be driving. And that is a radiator swap. Wrapped up.
Hey.
Things you do for love, huh? Oh, what the hell? Where did that just come from? Did that just fall out of the sky? We only missed, I don't know, 50 feet, 80 feet of traffic movement. Took us about 40 minutes.
That was tight. That's good. That's good. I guess we put the top. We got the top out of the car. Cover. This flashlight.
I don't know. I think it was a coin stuck to my phone.
Oh yeah, now we're moving. All right, maybe leave it in the car. Just leave it.
Give it once over up here, Steve. We really haven't stopped. We have tons and tons of projects. Lots of projects that we were expecting to have out already that we haven't even really started on. So we're struggling with the amount of workload that's coming in, which is, you know, mainly in part to you guys. So thank you so much for the support and everything that goes a long way, because a lot of people are saying, oh, I heard you here, I seen you there, my buddy talks about you, and I got, you know, the lead to come in. But as at this time, we're only able to manage so many cars, and so if you're looking to get work done to your car, you know, inquire with us. But no offense, we're kind of getting really picky on the cars that we work on, because there's only 3 of us, and every project takes all 3 of us at some point or another to make sure that it passes everything that SSP stands for, and it's going to perform to a way that we're proud to have our sticker on it. So, you know, if it's a long wait time or a long lead time, or I don't get back to you right away, you know, I apologize in advance. But, you know, we are really stacked, and luckily I'm very grateful that we're able to kind of be selective to pick, you know, the most interesting builds, or the ones that are kind of pertain to what we like and what we want to do, and what kind of fits our motto, let's say, or our I don't know what the word would be, but fits Streetcar's family, and that's what we've been calling it. So to wrap up this video, thank you guys for watching this far. I want to show you guys a couple of the projects that have been in and out early this year. Just ones that we've got to put some SSP flair on and spend a little time on to make them worthy. The big one that I'm excited for in the future is kind of like another Loch Ness style build, which is a Coyote Swap 93 Cobra in teal. Super sweet car, super awesome guy that owns it, Doug. He asked us to do a lot of work to it, and quite frankly, all we did to it for the most of the winter was store it. So I feel bad about that, because we got wrapped up in some of the racing projects. But when it came time to start hoofing on it, we really did. We've got, you know, the old rusty subframe connectors cut off. We put new subframe connectors on it. We put the motor in it, customized the exhaust like we did on Loch Ness to get everything to fit. Got the T56 Magnum installed, the headers to fit. It's got a QuickTime bell housing on it, so we had to get the headers to fit around that. Then we did all stainless brake lines on it, made sure that doesn't leak, installed the Hydro Boost, really just made it nice. And what's unique about the car is obviously it's a true teal Cobra, which is rare, but I really like it. It's got an 0304 IRS Cobra IRS system in it, so that's really sweet. I think the car is going to handle awesome. If it drives anything like Loch Ness, it's going to be extremely fun to drive. So we got a big portion of getting the driveline in that car, getting the suspension set up, and getting the exhaust groundwork laid. And then we kind of put that project on hold due to, you know, Doug's recommendation. We're kind of holding off. We put it in storage for him, and we'll see that on the channel later this year. Hopefully, I either figure out a way to get more videos out with a videographer hanging around, or the shop. We kind of manage the scheduling better, so we can kind of bring you guys some better updates on the projects that are actually being built. We got an LS swap car. You guys will see in the future. It was just a total rat that somebody seemingly threw together in like a weekend, and we spent a lot of time making it as nice as we could with the components that were there. Plus, you know, all new suspension, Viking coilovers. We rewired a lot of stuff, moved the battery to the trunk. We retigged the entire exhaust fork because it was just atrocious. I mean, it was just really bad. Now the car's really fun, and we do have one small problem with it right now, which is something to do with the hydraulic master cylinder that somebody put in it. It's got like a Willwood brake and clutch pedal box, and I think the master is actually too small for the hydraulic throwout bearing that's being used, so it literally takes every millimeter of master travel in order to get the clutch to disengage. We shimmed it tighter, we did a bunch of different stuff, and it still is like right at the end. So I'm not really happy about that, so we're figuring that out. And then that'll be good to go, but that's got like an autometer digital display in it, and it still needs quite a bit of work to be, you know, what he has in mind for it, but it's super fun to drive. I mean, it probably makes around 400 at the tire, and it's just overall fun car to drive that we spent a lot of time on making it nice. and I appreciate him letting us do that. Kind of ran away with it. Obviously, it's kind of one of our problems, but you know, every time you turn a page on some of these cars, you don't know who was leaving the notes previous, so sometimes it's not good. And in that case, none of it was good. The other project that you guys didn't really see a wrap-up video on yet is Shane's Whipple car. That was the one that's been hanging around for a long time also. It's a 3-liter Whipple, cams, RGR motor, just a ton of badass shit. Just really like an SSP level 5 build, short of a Magnum transmission. And that thing ended up making like 940 horsepower at the tire. And the dyno graph is just like going straight up right to 7100 where the ECU would fall off and just wouldn't let us rev it. So that was really disappointing that it wouldn't let us do that. So he's already on the list to come back to put a Mega Squirt on it. So we're gonna put a Mega Squirt, maybe a Magnum in it in the upcoming month or so, and we'll really see what we could do with that car. I mean, it'll be a lot better if I can get in there and tune it with a Mega Squirt. I'm a lot more comfortable with that platform. Obviously, we tune a lot of stock Cobras, but nothing that's been at that level. And with that blower that comes on that hard, sometimes the acceleration enrichment can be really difficult. It's hard to kind of pinpoint in the map where it wants to be as far as the MAF curve. So, it'd be a lot easier to put manifold air pressure sensor on it and tune it that way. So I'm really looking forward to that thing coming back, and I hope it unlocks us able to rev it to 9,000, because I think there's at least 100 horsepower hiding in that thing, just based on where the cam locations are versus the RPM that we were allowed to run. Where those cams are and the size of those cams, it should probably go like 82, 8300, and that car's got a really stout motor in that to be able to do it. So I look forward to that coming back. We'll see that upcoming, and then that's when we'll do kind of a wrap up on that car. I wasn't 100% happy with it yet, but it was a lot of work, a lot of labor, a lot of over budget type situation, and it was very, very good. But Shane drove it a bit, and he's like, "Okay, I'm ready. Yeah, let's just do the Mega Squirt and just do it all, so I can have it all really hopped up for the year." So I appreciate that, Shane. Thanks for reaching out to me to let us do that. And she's gonna be nasty. That's gonna be one of the nastiest Cobras to leave our shop, especially once that Mega Squirt's in. We did a single turbo Coyote car, which I really enjoyed. I got some pictures and videos. I'll clip that in here, of Nick Ryan's Coyote car. John was working on it for a long time and then asked us to finish it. And it turned out to be a really, really fun street car. It's got some oddities to it. It's got an AEM Infinity, which I have not tuned on before. So I learned a lot about that platform. And I don't mind learning about different tuning platforms, because sometimes I pick up something, messing with the AEM Infinity, that I can apply towards like tuning a Haltech car or tuning a Holly car or something where they might word it differently, but the way that it acts, it's like, oh, I wonder where you could do that in the other software. And then you kind of dig around and you find something, or you make a table for it. And so that was fun. I have a suspicion that it's got a throttle body issue, because all of a sudden he drove it home and it had a bunch of like throttle, probably kept blocking the throttle off of him, which I drove it like 100 miles. It did do it to me like once or twice, and I thought I had it figured out. But obviously it went downhill from there. So that's kind of a bummer, but the car ended up making like just under 1,000. It maxed out the turbo that they selected to have on there. And, made like 22 pounds of boost. It lights really fast, makes strong power, revs to 8,000. Really enjoyable car to drive. He allowed us to make full exhaust for it, so it's really quiet. Just overall, real fun, low 8-second car, I'm sure. I look forward to having that one at the track this year. Big one that you guys are going to like is going to be the Terminated Marauder. That's going to get its own video in total because it really is super cool. You know, not all these cars I'm talking about are going to get like full feature videos, but the Marauder is something that's a little bit different, but everybody loves something that can cruise awesome, and this thing like just smokes the tires till 60, 70 miles an hour with a 2.3 Whipple and a Terminator motor swapped into this Marauder. Super fun to drive, and I look forward to bringing you guys some updates on that. I'll put a little video in here on one of the dyno polls I think I have, but just kind of give you a teaser on what's to come with that. And then the biggest addition to our 2023 race season is going to be Connor's car. I'm thankful to have met Connor and Zorana, and they welcomed a third member to their family in just recently, so congrats to them. But I'm happy to have them as part of our racing program this year. They are bringing something that's a little bit more up my alley. So he's got a 347 with twins on it. Similar turbo sizing to Zach's 3-valve, but it's an R-headed 347. This is an R-headed 363. So obviously I'm a small block guy at heart. Turbo 400. He let us do some really sick rear end upgrades. I'll post those up here while I'm talking, and I'm really looking forward to how that car can progress this year. It's kind of funny because it will be almost a direct competitor to Zach's car, racing similar racing surfaces, but that only strengthens us as a team. So you know, his car is also full interior, street worthy. You know, they're very much the same in that regard. Zach's car is probably a little bit wilder in the engine combination just because it really needs to be. It's almost like a handicap that we had to overcome. Whereas Connor's is a mild 347 that just makes really good power for the combination that's in it. So he asked us once again this year to do a bunch of work to it and get it ready for this year. And then he's also asked us to take over on like the tuning, suspension setup, and really helping him gear the car towards success. I think as of right now, the only thing that I'm worried about on that car is the wiring, which is kind of a problem in a lot of these race cars that have been passed around from guy to guy to guy. But when you look underneath the dashboard of that car, it does not give you much confidence that you're not one day going to run into a wiring issue. So that's about all that's left on that car. Everything else, suspension-wise, is pretty stout. I wouldn't mind putting hard brake lines on it. It has a lot of soft brake lines on it. But otherwise, you know, it balances well. It should make pretty good power. But it's another no-prep backtrack car, and I look forward to seeing it down at the Brawl, see how it'll do on that surface. If you guys were here for this whole 30-40 minute video, I thank you guys so much. I did clip in some other videos. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will bring you guys some more updates on what's going on in the shop, what's going on with the 3-valve, the Tramp. You know, the Tramp is alive and well. We already fixed it from the Florida debacle. It's already got the head gaskets replaced. I softened the tune-up on it, and I think really the biggest thing was that I didn't do a hot retorque on the head gaskets, and when I did this time, I got like a half a turn on all of them, which was like the equivalent of like 15, 16 foot-pounds, so maybe that had a lot to do with it. I'm probably going to take the headers off, which is a pain in the ass, but I'm probably going to take the headers off and retorque them even again before we really start racing it, just to make sure it stays inside. I really don't want to work on the Tramp. The Tramp was always like reliable. It had like, you know, a minor issue every year that was usually an upgradable offense, like fuel pump or injectors, or, you know, at one point we had one relay on the fuel pump and it needed 2 relays on the fuel pump. You know, small stupid stuff like that. Not put freaking head gaskets in it every weekend. That is not what the car's for. But we went to MKE Cruise a couple weeks ago, and it was really nice to see everybody. That was like kind of the season opener for us. We brought Dan's car, the Lightning. Mike Greco brought his NA Fox out, which I'm really excited to see how that car does this year. And we just had a good time cruising around Milwaukee. it was kind of a cluster. No offense to John, but he didn't expect to organize like 300 cars driving around Milwaukee. Driving around Milwaukee, but the positive consequence of that was that everybody was lost. So pretty much at any given time, if you were to look at a side street or you were to look across the street in the intersection or at one of the overpasses, there was fucking streetcars on it. I mean, so that was pretty cool. I mean, we weren't all in like a funeral procession, which was kind of the idea, I'm sure, that we were going to just be like a biker gang going through Milwaukee. But it did turn out to just be like streetcars scattered all over Milwaukee. And then like every 20 minutes, the majority of us would meet up somewhere. And we got some good races in with the Endless guys. We had a lot of fun. Fun with that. The roads were cold. The Tramp was sketchy. But I'm excited. I'm excited for the season. I apologize for not keeping you guys up to date, but hopefully this kind of answers some of your questions that you guys had getting as to what's going on with some of these cars. If there's anything that you want me to cover in the next video as far as updating you on anything, just comment down below what it is that you want to see. If there's any questions that you have in regarding anything specifically, just ask it in the comments down below, and maybe I'll make a video out of it. If I don't respond to you, I'm sorry, but I'll definitely try to address it in the next video. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you don't already, please click the subscribe button, and we'll see you guys either at the next track outing or in this next video, whichever one happens to come first. Thanks.